And among the things I'll be reporting on to Cabinet is this issue of absorption and performance generally of this development partner platform, because we realize the need for us to escalate and report them on a very high level. May I finish by saying that the issue of mapping of the government side and the development partner part needs to be sharpened. We need to really ask ourselves which government ministry or department has got which program and who are the partner interested in that particular program. I think there's still some loose ends which I think the unit in the office of the Deputy President will work with the ministries to ensure that we become more sharper in the clustering and especially in the pairing and mapping of partners to departments. Thank you.
Thank you, CS, for that. We have time for one more intervention from the floor. So I think we'll go to you. Yes? If you could please keep it brief. Yeah.
Yes, good morning. My name is Henriette Geiger. I'm the European Union Ambassador. First of all, thank you, Vice President Gachagua, for the kind invitation, and PS Kipto for the very good presentation. I want to start by fully endorsing what my US colleague just said on all 3 points. These are also points that are very valid for us, and they merit some further in-depth discussions in a working group format. Also on the figures and the tables presented by the PS, definitely we need to sit down on some of the figures to coordinate. I wanted to talk about streamlining of the process, because when we talk about absorption capacity, what Stephen said before, unblocking is what we do right now. We unblock one by one, and that is not the way we can work, because if I unblock my project, then the other projects are being blocked. So we unblock what is good for us and the rest after me the flood. And that cannot ever lead to 100% absorption. So we have to streamline the system so we do not need to unblock and intervene for things to go ahead. Regarding the co-financing, this is indeed a very critical issue at this juncture of Kenya, and we all know why. But the EU is working with both grants and soft loans and concessional loans. So if there's no co-financing, we cannot do blending of grants and loans, leveraging much larger amounts. So in one way or another, we have to find a way around it. Otherwise, we can only work with grants, which will greatly limit the flows into Kenya. So this is also something that is not easy to resolve, but we have to resolve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I think those were all very good interventions, and I'm hoping our colleagues were able to take those down. We are now, because we are pressed for time, I would say that in order to ensure the action-oriented spirit of the ambitions of His Excellency, the Deputy President, Government of Kenya, and development partners, they've mutually agreed on a decision for this agenda item, and I think a lot of it has been reflected in the conversation here, that will allow us to take steps to address the challenges that have surfaced here related to the absorption capacities of both loans and grants. And so to briefly summarize, and some of this was alluded to by our presenters earlier, that development partners and government will together work to strengthen visibility and alignment of support to Kenya, particularly seeking solutions to render visible and better aligned partnership that is not in the form of direct budget support. And the DPF will mandate a small task force comprising representatives from the government and developing partners to work on identifying concrete recommendations, some of which, of course, were mentioned here, for how to address these key challenges related to absorption capacities. And the task force will report back at the next Development Partners Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the agenda item on absorption capacities, and we will now move on to the strengthening resilience agenda item, which is our second agenda item for today. Again, following the DPF last November, it was agreed that partners would work jointly to identify recommendations for how to strengthen resilience, to ensure that this is more coordinated, inclusive, and flexible, among other things. Specifically, 10 joint sector working groups under the coordination of the Office of the Deputy President were tasked to provide inputs to an integrated resilience framework that will help guide both the government and the development partners on how to strengthen our response and report back on this to the DPF membership. I would like now to introduce a very short 1-minute video on resilience produced by the Office of the Deputy President.
In the recent past, heart-wrenching shocks have pierced the heart of Kenya. Irrespective of the challenges faced by adverse effects of climate change, geopolitical factors, political dynamics, and technological disruptions, the nation has stood strong but bruised. We cannot rule out future pandemics, accidents, droughts, floods, epidemics, cultural shifts, political instabilities, food insecurities, and other shocks and stresses that hit with little or no notice. So, we must come together in the face of adversity. We must build and strengthen resilience as individuals, households, organizations, communities, and as a nation. There is need for us to have mechanisms which will ensure better governance and coordination. The need and call to better responses, a harmonized approach, and refined adaptation will yield a prepared nation against disruptions, shocks, and stresses. A national resilience framework will therefore strengthen flexibility, adaptability, and better response.
Welcome.
Your Excellency, Honorable Cabinet Secretaries, big PSS, distinguished guests, good morning. As has been introduced, I'm presenting a paper. I think we can put up the PowerPoint. Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, I'm presenting a paper which we did by a number of us who are in the team. Sorry. Take it back to the beginning, yeah. So I think following the last DPF meeting, we were tasked, a number of us, to look at how we can come up with a framework of strengthening resilience in Kenya. So within your pockets, you have a document that is a little bit more detailed. We have a small presentation that we are going to give. And the main objective of our presentation is to sort of, first of all, look at the conceptual framework of what resilience is, and then with that now define on what we are supposed to do. So the committees that were part of this process of developing this concept were, as listed there, 10 sector working groups comprising of social protection, water and sanitation, devolution, agriculture and livestock, environment protection and natural resources, health, lands, housing and urban development, blue economy, assaults and energy. So, but more special mention is going to be given to also UNICEF and FCDO, which helped in the shaping up of the document that we are talking about. We incorporated them to bring the the development partners component into the definition. So what we did first was we defined what is resilience. And here we were looking at the entirety of it, the ability of individuals, households, communities, and government systems to adapt to, anticipate, withstand, and recover from shocks and stressors in a timely manner. And so, in that definition, for the individual, we were looking at how an individual can adjust to new conditions, how an individual can be mentally capable to manage and express emotions constructively so that we can address whatever shocks that come our way. Also improve on the optimism of the individuals, as well as also the social support that they give to each other, ability to solve problems, and also economic sufficiency. For the household was how the household can have multiple streams of income to help them mitigate on the financial risk that comes with the shocks that affect us. Savings, how do we impress savings so that they're able to also on their own solve some of the problems that they are faced with. Access to services, how households can get reliable health care, education, and social services. Strong family bonds, because also you find that in resilience, when there are ties in family, they're able to withstand the challenges that come. How can they be prepared as households? And this is where social inclusion, how do they save, how do they store food reserves for themselves, and also health and nutrition. Institutions is how institutions can now have robust and reliable, adaptable physical technological infrastructure to help in supporting families and households in addressing the challenges. Risk management is also one of the other areas that we're looking at. How can institutions anticipate and have strategies to identifying and mitigating on these risks? The other issue also we looked at on resilience of institutions is continuity planning. How can they plan so that they're able to always anticipate and overcome the challenges? Adaptive leadership. How can institutions have leadership that is flexible, forward-looking, and thinking and responsive? And also looking at employees and collaborative networks so that they're able to sort the challenges that come our way in case of shocks that come. For community, again, social cohesion, leadership at the local level where communities are able to lead themselves to solve problems, resource availability for the community, inclusive participation, education and awareness, as well as community networks. Again, all these, when they are strengthened, that builds a resilient community. The same thing for the county and also for the nation. So that is how we started. First of all, defining how resilience is at every level, from the very micro to the macro level. And we also looked at what are some of these shocks that normally comes our way. First of all, there are droughts, floods, pandemics, epidemics, geophysical challenges, violence, and economic disruptions. I think in our country for the last few years, we've seen us moving from one extreme end to the other. For the last 4 years up to last year, we were suffering from a very intense drought that we've ever witnessed in a long time. Immediately after that came the issue of the floods, and you could see that if we now don't look for adaptive strategies so that we don't have to be moving from one cycle, responding to one form of extreme shock and moving on to the next one. How do we now adapt the communities? How do we adapt individuals so that the next shock that comes is not as extreme as the last one? So in terms of now defining, again, we said resilience involve adaptive, anticipatory, absorptive, and also transformative. When you look at as a country, we have a number of programs that we've been using to respond to shocks. And here we have Inua Jamii, which is under the social protection. We have complementary programs like, we have also Hunger Safety Network program under the ASAL. And again, these ones are only like responding to shocks, but they don't prepare the community to being able to withstand in the next one. Other complementary programs like Economic Inclusion Program, Niche, and others all again are looking at just responding to shocks, but we find that the implementation of such programs again faced a number of issues. One, there is a siloed approach. When you look at Inua Jamii and Hunger Safety Network, it is the same database, but being administered from two different institutions. So the same individual, I think in the world of relief, they'll say double dipping. I could be registered under Hunger Safety Net. I'm also in a new Jamii. I get the 4,000 in this other arm. I get the other one. And then it is also not so inclusive because it is focusing on a number of areas. So you find a few number are getting more support while others are left out. So the siloed approach is one of the issues. The other one is on the issues of inadequate financing. I know like in Hunger Safety Network, initially used to be 4 counties, now it has been expanded to about 8, and yet when you look at the ASAL counties in the country, there are 23. So what happens to the rest of the other counties? And so, but if we're able to come together and remove this silo approach to solving the problems, then you'll find that we will spread and be able to serve more. Weak coordination is also another challenge, and also legislation to effect coordinated resilience. It is not yet institutionalized. And I think there is a process, as we are talking of a National Disaster Risk Management Bill and social protection that is ongoing. So, the gaps that we identified, one is that there is issues on governance, there is issues of financing, and then there is issues of adaptation practices. And I'll want to spend a little bit more time on the adaptation because when you look at the programs I've mentioned, they're only on response to shocks. And then we sit back, we wait for another shock to come, we mobilize resources again to respond to another shock, and I think what we need to do is, as we respond to shocks, how do we build or implement adaptation practices so that when another shock comes, the impact may not be as high or as big as the previous one. For instance, when you look at the cycles that I mentioned a while ago, in a few months, maybe we may be back here again asking us, we have drought, pasture has been depleted, we have issues of animals dying, people are suffering from water scarcity. Yet, we have just come from a flood situation. So what we are advocating in this resilience strengthening strategy is that how do we program activities that are going to go towards changing and adapting the communities so that in the areas, and we went through all the sectors, like in our sector of water, how do we harvest, store the water so that we can avail the same water for irrigation, for household use, and animal and pasture regeneration. In health, how do we strengthen the nutrition? How do we strengthen the health system, immunization? Those are some of the adaptation practices that we need now as we respond to shocks. How do we also have a parallel program to enhance and finance adaptation practices? So in your document that is before you, we have commitments that we've put under what we're calling Annex 1. When you look at the back of it, we've listed on adaptation mechanism, what do we need to do? And the response, what do we need to do? So in a nutshell, that is how we've gone. Like we're saying that we're looking at how we can implement the provision of PFM Act by operationalizing a contingency fund. Again, this is still a work in progress. We will sit down with Treasury now so that we can structure how this contingency fund can be done. We also are saying how can counties, governments operationalize, sorry, you're pushing it, pull it down a bit fast, down before. Yeah. How county governments can operationalize the county emergency funds as stipulated in the PFM Act. And what happens when there is no emergency in that financial year? Do we then dedicate that funds to an adaptive programs so that it's not that money that will be absorbed back into the other programs which are not going to help in building the resilience of our people? Put mechanism in place for development partners and private sector to contribute to resilience funds or risk transfer instruments, and then put mechanism for resilience fund to draw both adaptation and response, to fund both adaptation and also response activities. On each sector, I think we've also said we'll look at the regulatory updates. We'll also look at conducting scenario planning so as to see how we are able to address. We went down again, just slow down a bit. Okay, we also came up with a proposed governance and coordination mechanism, which is again starting from the county, that is at the grassroots, coming all the way up to the national, so that we make sure that in all the areas we map them out and we ensure that there is input from every level of our society. Next, I think that should be the end of the presentation. So that is what we presented, and I think before in the next DPF meeting, we'll now come up with a proper strategy and policy, which will have been canvassed through cabinet for adaptation, for adoption, and also approval. Thank you.
Thank you, PS, for that presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we will open up for plenary for about 10 minutes. And I want to assure you, I know that there had been hands up in the last round, and we couldn't get to that because of time. Please rest assured that we do want to hear your inputs, and there will be, as mentioned, a small task force, tasked with taking this forward. And so please surface your views to them, and the details of that task force will be in the minutes from this meeting. So please do not lose heart, and please let us open up for the next round of plenary on this issue of resilience. So if we could have any hands up, if you could keep your interventions short, action-oriented, and introduce yourself when the roving mic comes to you. Ambassador.
Thank you. Caroline Vicini, Ambassador of Sweden. We got access to this document that talked about resilience at every level, from the family unit all the way up. And it was a very beautiful instrument, or a very beautiful document in sort of expressing solidarity on each and every level. What I was missing in that document was the gender perspective. Because women in this country own much less than men. It is a very big difference. And here it's talked about people as everyone were more or less similar, and this could be replicated at the different levels. But a household with a single mother with a number of children is a very different family unit than one of us sitting here is having, probably. And also we have been engaged a lot in this social safety net work together with UNICEF, WFP, etc. And I'm not sure, you were mentioning double dipping. I could say in my country that could happen. Here I'm not sure it's such a prevalent problem. I think rather the problem is that more people would need access to this, and on a regular basis, so the income distribution changes.
Observation that resilience is very key, and it is a step towards our economic transformative model. But from the approaches, PS, that you have presented, I would request that we need to really include sustainable models. For example, we have just recently seen a lot of mass effect of floods. If private sector could be really be given also space to support the initiatives of development partners and the government, so that we come up with a sustainable model, for example, building on very good food reserves, and also building on or harvesting rainwater. And this would be very key. In the next few months, we are likely to also experience drought. So we'll be crying from the floods, then we cry from the drought impact. I think this should really be addressed. And another thing is harmonization of resilient approaches. So that what happens in Samburu, so that there would be no duplication of initiatives. I saw this during floods. There is this institution that would call for the support, the development support also is also there, government initiative, county government. So we need to really, the joint working group needs to come up with a very harmonized approach where you are able to really document what happens in Samburu so that another partner should not also be doing the same thing, so that those other resources can be channeled for other things. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick, for your points on sustainability, which is music to our ears on the SDGs, of course, and then harmonization to avoid duplication. And thank you, Ambassador, for your points on gender perspectives and that we're lacking, and a broader look on redistribution. Yeah, thanks. At the corner, yeah. There's a mic behind you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Kinuthia, representing PS ourselves, and one of the persons in the team that we developed the brief that has been presented by the PS. And it's true what the CEO has said. We are not leaving anyone behind, including the private partner and all that. What the PS has presented is just a brief of that, because we know that all of us participate in the resilience building of the country. And when we start from individuals, we are trying to look at this individual, whether a female-headed household, whether somebody living with a disability and all that. To start with, we may not be able to reach everybody, but that's where we want to start. Then we come up to the households, and then the connectivity of the systems. As PS Korir has said, if we develop these dams and we help these communities to produce the food and all that for their subsistence livelihoods, these communities will at some point have surplus for market. Are these communities connected to the markets? Do they have market access? Have they even been built, capacity built to know what the market requires out there? So that they don't just produce, you take to the market, nobody needs it. Those kind of connectivities, are they able to process this food, maybe even the fruits, the milk and all that, so that we don't end up with losses? For example, some time back there was the issue of, in one of the counties, the milk glut. We saw a KCC pouring milk away. It couldn't handle all of it. And in another corner, at the same time, some people are suffering from hunger. These are the kind of connectivities we are talking about. Can these surplus areas be connected to areas that need these foods and all that? So these are the kind of connectivities we are talking about, so that everybody, the individual, the community, the systems and all that can be resilient.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kinuthia, for that clarification. We appreciate it. Stephen Jackson, our resident coordinator.
Thank you. I'll be very brisk because you've heard from me enough, I think. To welcome the government's document, I think we feel it's a very important innovation. And one of the things that it bears out is that resilience programming works. We know from the numbers around the last drought that however bad it was, it would have been twice as bad as that had there not been 10 years of investment in resilience. So that's the first point, which leads to the second, which is that I think it's very helpful, as this document does, that government ask not just partners to be looking for new money, which is in short supply, but that when crisis comes, there be a request to reprogram money. That's very helpful. It frees up partners to be able to look flexibly at their existing portfolio. The third point is that there's a direct connection from this discussion on resilience to the issues that came up at the Africa Climate Summit, Waziri, and I know you and I were talking about that just before the meeting. And so, just to foreshadow things, I think the next Development Partners Forum may well look at, follow on to the Climate Summit, and I would say resilience is an important piece of that discussion too. Fourth point is that we really need to be thinking about insurance. Insurance at the micro level for the smallholder farmer whose crops are destroyed by the floods, but insurance at the national level. Countries can insure, just like how house owners can do, against things like floods and droughts. The Africa Risk Capacity is a proven mechanism for that. The private market also offers it. I think if Kenya is going to be facing these kinds of climate shocks going forward, then actually insurance is something that really needs to be looked at by government. And finally, the architecture point, PS, you told us that the National Disaster Management Bill is going through the House. That's a really key opportunity to get this right, to make sure that we have institutions that are mandated to respond to emergency, but to prepare for emergency, and then very particularly to reduce the risk of emergency. And so that is what the resilience discussion is all about. So let's work together to help Kenya get the institutions that it needs through that bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. On the point about recognizing the work that's already been done and progress made, the need to consider reprogramming, of course, the piece of the ACS follow-up, the Africa Climate Summit follow-up, the discussion around national insurance as an opportunity, as well as the National Disaster Management Bill. I'd like to hand over to Anthony Gorano, UNDP rep. You wanted to say something?
Thanks. My name is Anthony Ngorano. I'm the resident representative of the UNDP. I just want to maybe add to Stephen's list. Kenya has taken really important measures to really mimic or embed this paradigm shift that's seeing us move away our focus from essentially managing disasters to managing risk. And I think maybe just in terms of the National Disaster Risk Management Bill, I think it would be interesting and opportune to see how maybe in this particular conversation we could look at bringing the parliamentarians on board. I think in terms of this bill, it's in transit, I think, from Parliament from the lower house to the upper house, and we know over the last 10 to 15 years this has proven a challenge. I think we're sensing, and I was with PS Omola yesterday and the leaders of both houses, that there is a bicameral but also a kind of a cross-party benches spirit. I think the time to capitalize upon it is now. Thank you.
Thank you for that detail. We have time for one more intervention from the floor. Going once, twice, and that is that. Thank you so much for your valuable interventions, which will have been captured by our colleagues on the side there from the Deputy President's office. So, ladies and gentlemen, as for the previous agenda item on absorption capacities, to ensure an action-oriented meeting, the government and development partners have decided on how to proceed from here. And to summarize, it is recommended that the integrated resilience framework is further refined and requests the co-chairs of the joint sector working groups, in particular on ASAL, agriculture, social protection, devolution, environment, climate and forestry, water and sanitation, energy, land and housing, public finance management, and gender, to provide concrete recommendations to facilitate the finalization and operationalization of the framework. And second, that development partners are invited to support the government in finalizing and implementing the integrated resilience framework, including by considering more flexible funding that allows reprogramming in response to potential risks or shocks. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to the next agenda item on the forward-looking Development Partners Forum agenda, which is tentatively to take place in September. So we already have one agenda item identified from the discussions here today around the absorption capacities and the report back on the work by the task force to take next steps to address these challenges on these absorption capacities. In addition, the government and development partners have together identified a list of forward-looking agenda items that will benefit from high-level political attention. As such, it is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Sebastian Grota and Dr. Jane Kirangai, Head of the International Development Partnerships Coordination Unit in the Deputy President's Office, to the stage for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will try to be very brief. I think once again, the forum has shown its value and usefulness for a good exchange between government and donors, and that's why we already planning the next one. So our idea was, in view of the calendar, the second half of this year with the Summit of the Future in September and COP29 in November, to convene a bit earlier in September. We don't have fixed the date, but you can already look at the first week of September. And then there was, I think, the offer also of His Excellency the President to probably take part in the next meeting. So we are working also on this. I think one issue that we then should or could finalize is the paper on the absorption capacity. As Stephen laid out, a working group will now operationalize the 5 baskets, and also the input of the government, of course, will be taken into this paper. And then the resilience paper would be brought to the next stage of operationalization between the different stakeholders. And then our proposal would be to introduce one more topic for the next session. And we already received some proposals, and we try to look at them also for the thematic pipeline for next year already. And our idea and proposal would be for next meeting, for the September meeting, to focus and zoom in on the question of the follow-up of the Africa Climate Summit and look how to operationalize some of the results of the summit. That's one part, could be the financial discussion, but the other part that seems also to be very important for the Kenyan government is the question of green industrialization and investment. And I know that a big number of donors are very active in this field, so we all have our interests also from the private sector in this field. So I think this would be a very relevant topic also for jobs and economic growth of Kenya. We would try to formalize this a bit with our Kenyan partners and then send it around. And then also we are open for new proposals with regard to next year, Stephen and myself and our teams. So if you have any priorities, any ideas, proposals, please let us know. And please pin down already the first week of September as a potential date for the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I think mine will be very brief, just following up on what the co-chair has said. But maybe before I put my pitch, I wanted to invite CS Soipan, given that the proposed topic really sits in her docket, for her to really maybe give us her perspectives. Thank you. Karibu Waziri.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President, the co-chairs of the DPF, the Cabinet Secretary, colleagues present, the Head of Public Service, and all our partners, good morning. I'm extremely delighted to be part of this second DPF meeting. I'm one of the very active NAJA of the DPF unit in the Office of the Deputy President. And I must really say this is, Your Excellency, this is one of the very, very important actions that you have really held on to
and it's really going to turn tables around for our country. When we look at the theme, which is increasing effectiveness and development assistance and strengthening resilience, it really speaks to the currency of the challenges we are facing, but also huge opportunity to turn things around. When we look at the figures presented by Dr. Kipto, 256 projects, 2.6 trillion worth of money that is within the country from development partnerships, out of which only 700 billion has been disbursed. And when we talk about the challenges we are facing with absorption, these are real issues because with all the challenges that we have within the country, we really have to get things moving, because money lying somewhere and is not going to its intended use against a backdrop of many challenges is really not desirable. One of the issues that PS Kipto speaks to, he says that one of the challenges with the absorption of funding is where midway through a program, we have to change the program design or change the scope of things, and that can be cured by making sure that at the inception or conception of projects, we really have the involvement of all the players and make it as consultative as it can get. Balozi Henriette speaks to a very important issue. Instead of very ad hoc and disjointed unlocking and unblocking of things, streamlining is of critical importance. The question of coordination, standardization, really is what we need to go with. And I'm really happy to say that the many discussions I have personally held with our partners, David Gosney here knows the discussions we have had, Balozi Sebastian, UNDP, the World Bank, GIZ, who have really been supportive of our programs, really speaks to the need for us to speak to each other, have a very coordinated approach to things. And just to speak to one recommendation that has been made here, which is for all the projects to go through cabinet, it may not be feasible in the real sense of it because of the magnitude and the number of projects that we have to churn through cabinet. But what we are really saying is that the disjointed nature of how some of these projects are processed, they really become counterproductive and really undermine the impact that we need to see out of these projects. And probably what we need to say is that we have projects that are ongoing in our ministries, and I'm sure colleagues here can attest to it, that are very active. But the policy heads in the ministries, who are the cabinet ministers, have no idea of the projects going on. And I think that really is one of the challenges that we really have to streamline how we conceptualize, how these programs come on board to make sure that the siloing approach is really brought to an end. Siloing breeds a lot of darkness, opaqueness, and many other things. So if we open this up to transparency on both sides, it is going to be a maximization of impact. Finally, I want to say that I'm really pleased to have the operationalization of the outcome of the Africa Climate Summit as one of the identified, looking forward agenda for the DPF. The Africa Climate Summit, by all standards, came out very successfully with the heavy support of all of you seated here. It is one that demonstrates how we can, hold together and deliver a very critical agenda, not just for Kenya, for Africa and the globe. The issue of green industrialization, the issue of review and relooking at the international global financial infrastructure to speak to the core needs of Africa, Kenya, and the issues that are at hand in terms of the climate agenda. the need to make sure that climate action and development are mutually inclusive. These are the discussions that came out of the Africa Leaders Declaration, which we must carry forward. And I'm happy to say that in line with what has been identified as a priority here, during our African Leaders Summit in Addis, Kenya got the green light from the African Union to put up a secretariat here in Nairobi. We are at advanced stages. I'm happy we're having discussions with the GIZ and other partners. So that is the place to start, to really incubate the green industrialization ideas and bring them up to practical action. So my ministry is ready for that. And also from the aspect of coordination and streamlining and standardization, I like to tell Jane that with all the issues that we have discussed and some of the recommendations coming through, I am ready to work with the task force that has been proposed here as a guinea pig, because my docket, I'm sad to say that with the listing of the portfolios, the environment, climate change, and forestry docket does not appear. It comes at distant others. And I think with the issues that we are facing on the environment, climate change, and forestry and ecosystem restoration, I want to appeal to our partners that we really need to raise the profile of this docket so that we don't remain there in the others. We're actually not featuring anywhere. But when it comes to the practicality of what we need to do to re-engineer the partnerships, we have a lot of practical proposals that we offer to support the task force to actually help us come with the standardization that we are looking for, the streamlining and making everything move forward, and not to overemphasize the importance of the resilience framework that we are talking about. We have to move away from firefighting to actually have very intentional and defined ways in which to respond to the disasters all around us. And Your Excellency, the process that we are undertaking as cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries of disseminating our MTP4 across the counties, when you look at the aspect of resilience that is captured in our MTP4, it really falls short of a very elaborate view of what resilience interventions we need to see in this country. And I'm sure with this initiative through your office, we need to enrich our MTP4 and our strategies on disaster risk management. With those few remarks, I want to conclude and say asanteni.
So thank you so much, Basili. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to, as promised, make sure that the DPF is really robust and it's all inclusive. And I'll ask to go to the next slide. And so far, we have proposals for forthcoming agenda items. They're on the screen, but we did not want to lock anyone out because these are generated from the joint sector working groups. And we would hope that even those that are not on the screen would actually come forward with proposal that we begin to put in a pipeline. Allow me maybe before we finish this one to sort of emphasize that we've made remarkable progress in terms of reactivating joint sector working groups under the revamped network. But let me provide you with a snapshot of where we are and also make this a call to action. We have, as of now, 12 joint sector working groups that meet regularly, and they are co-chaired by the principal secretaries and the development partners. We have 5 that meet irregularly, and we have 5 that have not met. We didn't want to make this an MHM, but they're there. If you reach out to our office, we'll let you know that the joint sector working groups that have not yet been constituted, but we have been working together with the Office of the Head of Public Service. He's been very supportive in making sure that the principal secretaries are really taking up the mantle and providing leadership in terms of the thematic agendas. So we want to urge all the principal secretaries present and the partners present to make sure that the 5 that have not yet met actually do get into action. And it is from these thematic groups that we shall get a very robust and a very vibrant dialogue with partners. I just want to thank you for the progress we've made to date. I think that's it from me, and I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian and Jane, for that presentation. It is now my pleasure to invite Principal Secretary Dr. Chris Kiptor to read the joint statement from today's Development Partners Forum. Thank you, PS.
Let me first give apologies. My Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndungu, was supposed to read this statement, but he's still on the way coming. So we will need to signal him not to come. I'll happily represent him. On June 4th, 2024, the government of Kenya, under the leadership of the Deputy President, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, and development partners to Kenya, held the second Development Partners Forum to engage on central issues for a continued strong partnership between the government of Kenya and its development partners. The Development Partners Forum is the highest level structured dialogue between the government of Kenya and its development partners. The Development Partners Forum was co-chaired by His Excellency Sebastian Groth, Ambassador of Germany to Kenya, and His Excellency Stephen Jackson, United Nations Resident Coordinator to Kenya, in their capacities as chairs of the Development Partners Group. At the forum, the Kenyan government and its development partners agreed on the following nine issues. First, they appreciated the cordial and fraternal relations that exist between the Kenya government and its development partners, and reiterated the value of the Development Partners Forum to foster high-level political dialogue on strategic questions related to development cooperation. Secondly, they recognized the key role the joint sector working groups play in the operationalization of the revamped development coordination architecture, and encourage sector groups, co-chairs, to use these platforms to provide collaborative leadership in these sectors. 3, they acknowledge that the absorption of committed funds and loans has not been at its optimal level, and appreciating the common desire to address the challenges and obstacles hindering this absorption, both parties committed to crafting joint interventions that would prescribe plausible solutions. 4, they agreed to mandate a task force comprising government and development partner representatives, which will work to identify concrete recommendations for how to address key challenges, including those related to absorption capacities, such as counterpart funding, human resource capacities and competencies, use of harmonized principles for more effective and efficient use of financial resources. Further, they agreed that the task force will present these recommendations to Cabinet at the next Development Partner Forum and report back on progress at subsequent development partner forums. 5th, they agreed to give more visibility and importance to development partner support, including support that does not flow in the form of direct budget support. Further, they agreed to strive to align new and existing projects and support with the government core development priorities under the bottom-up economic transformation and the medium-term plan, number 4. 6th, they agreed to further refine the integrated resilience framework and request the co-chairs of the joint sector working groups, in particular on ASALs, agriculture and livestock, social protection, devolution, health, environment protection and natural resources, water and sanitation, energy, land, housing and urban development, blue economy and fisheries, PFM and gender, to provide concrete recommendations to facilitate the finalization, institutionalization, and operationalization of the framework, and report to the Development Effectiveness Group on this. 7, they encourage stepping up of efforts to achieve concrete results towards enhanced resilience at the relevant levels in Kenya and in an inclusive and gender-responsive manner, including by considering building of buffers and more flexible funding that allows reprogramming in response to potential risks or shocks. 8, they agreed on the important role of non-state actors, including civil society and private sector, in bringing partnership to new and revamped levels. And finally, 9, they agreed to have the next Development Partnership Forum in the beginning of September 2024, and that the agenda for this meeting will, among others, focus on the follow-up of the priorities emerging from Africa Climate Summit, including the implementation of relevant initiatives in Kenya, such as the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative, as well as in relation to Kenya's high-level participation in the Summit of the Future and the COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. In conclusion, in line with the international agreements, notably the Paris Declaration and the Accra Plan of Action on Aid Effectiveness, this joint statement embodies the vision of the government of Kenya and that of the development partners to harness the enormous potential to further strengthen and consolidate their joint comprehensive partnership in all areas of bilateral and multilateral endeavors. Signed by His Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, His Excellency Sebastian Gross, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to Kenya, and His Excellency Stephen Jackson, UN Resident Coordinator to Kenya. Thank you very much. I forgot the role that I had been given, which is to invite His Excellency the Deputy President to make his closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I had also not been told that I would be required to say something. Please sit down. Let me take this opportunity to thank all those who have made presentations and those who have made interventions. And I want to say that the task force that will be put in place should proceed with speed so that the issues that need to be addressed are addressed, so that we can be able to have better absorption rates for our funds that have been expended in this great country. Again, on the mechanism to build resilience so that we can be better prepared to deal with the negative effects of climate change and other challenges that come across the way all the time. Let me encourage continuous engagement with our partners. The Ruto administration has identified continuous engagement as our modus operandi, and so far it has worked very well for us. Let me encourage, even outside this forum, one-to-one consultation. If you have some program with a certain partner, as a ministry, please engage. And we did remove the bottlenecks that were there in terms of bureaucracy, that you have to go through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The President guided that we need to lessen bureaucracy and red tape so that we can make progress. We will continue meeting at the high-level consultation forum that I co-chair with the Prime Cabinet Secretary to unlock whatever impediments that are there that may hinder expeditious implementation of agreed programs, mostly at the Office of the Attorney General, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the National Treasury. That is where we have had challenges. At our forum, when those issues are brought to attention by the Secretariat sitting in my office, we'll be able to unlock them so that we can be able to make progress. Let me once more, on behalf of President William Ruto, the government of the Republic of Kenya, and indeed the people of Kenya, express our gratitude to our development partners for the support that you continue to give our country and our people. Since I came to office and I was leading the exercise to make interventions when we were in deep trouble over drought and El Nino and floods, our partners have always come through for us. We don't take it for granted. We want to thank your respective governments for your friendship and for your support. And we want to continue strengthening our relationships. My office is open to all of you. Heads of mission who want to come and consult with me, I'll be available at short notice. Those who may want to consult with His Excellency the President, he will be available at short notice, because when we consult and we engage, we become better people and we achieve good results in a very seamless manner. So once more, thank you very much. You are invited to hang around, don't be in a hurry to leave. There is no hurry. You can stay for the rest of the day, but we don't have enough place for you to sleep. By 6:30 you must leave so that you can go to your homes. And I want to say thank you very much. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Your Excellency, sir, a kind request for you to remain up on stage as you will be joined by the DPG co-chairpersons. May I kindly call upon His Excellency Sebastian Groth, Ambassador of Germany to Kenya, and co-chairperson Dr. Stephen Jackson, United Nations Resident Coordinator, for this photo opportunity in commemoration of the second annual Development Partners Forum. Shortly after, we're going to be joined in that first photo by the heads of corporations, Giovanni Grandi, Head of Office Co-Chairs, AICs, Italy. Please, if you could be making your way, together with Irene Garibaldi, Head of Cooperation, European Union Delegation to Kenya. Please, if you could join, heads of corporations, if you could join His Excellency and the co-chairs for that photo opportunity. I will then invite the co-chairs and the heads of corporations to proceed back to their seats and ask everybody else to be upstanding as we receive the national anthem. Shortly after, ladies and gentlemen, we'll proceed right across to have our lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, sir, the national anthem. Thank you. His Excellency now will proceed to leave at his pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is served. You're welcome.